Right. In the previous section, we discussed about how to recognize the revenue under the 5-step revenue recognition module. Here we are going to discuss about uh, basically how to recognize the relative cost of sales or the contract cost, and also disclosures presentations about the revenue, as well as we're going to discuss about the uh, special scenarios which is given in the standard in relation to the revenue. Right. Okay. So we'll first look at what do you mean by the contract cost. Right. Normal when a buying and selling company recognize the revenue, we recognize the corresponding cost of sales. Right. Likewise, here we are going to discuss about the cost of sales. Especially it has focused on the cost of sales in relation to the contracts. That means you agree to put up a building. In that case, you will have to incur some cost. What cost you should recognize into the P&L and what cost you should capitalize. Right. So that is the part we're going to discuss under these routes. So SLFRS 15 standard says that you should recognize the following costs. These costs as an asset in the financial statement until you recognize the revenue. Say normally buying and selling companies, they recognize the cost of the inventories in the cost of sales, right? Inventory as an asset in the balance sheet, right? Likewise, these kind of a cost you can capitalize and recognize as an asset in the financial statement, and systematic basis you can recognize to the P&L, right? What sort of? First one, it says the cost of obtaining a contract. Say you agree with the customer to put up a building and you enter into the contract. For that, lawyer charge you a fee. What you should do for that fee? Are you going to charge that legal fee to the lawyer fee to the P&L account, or are you going to charge that as an asset, that recognize that as an asset, right? So the standard says if you can claim that from the customer, you can charge to it, you can recognize that as an asset. If you can't collect it from the customer, you should take it into the P&L, right? That's what it says. Any non-incremental cost obtaining contract are recognized immediately in the profit or loss unless they can be charged to the customer regardless of whether the contract is obtained, right? සමහරලාට legal fee එක customer ගෙන් claim කරගන්න පුළුවන්, contract එක අපිට හම්බුණත් නැති වුණා. එහෙම එයාගෙන් claim කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මේක asset එකක් විදිහට recognize කරගන්න. asset එකක් කියලා මෙතන කියන්නේ fixed asset එකක් කියන එක නෙමෙයි. balance sheet එකේ asset එකක් විදිහට පෙන්නන්න until you recognize the revenue. Right? Cost of sales at inventory inventory asset. Likewise, you should recognize. Right? If there's any incremental cost of obtaining the new contract, are recognized as an asset if the cost is expected to be recovered. If there's any incremental cost that also you can recognize as an asset. The second category, it says cost of fulfilling the contract. දැන් අපි මේ හිතන්නකෝ අපි බිල්ඩින් එක හදාගෙන යනවා නම් ඒ හදන ලේබර්ස්ලාට ගෙවන cost එක තියෙනවානේ. ලේබර්ගේ salary එක, අයි salary එකට මොකද කරන්නේ කියලා බලන්න. Standard එක කියනවා you can capitalize that cost, otherwise if it is relating to a particular other standard, right? You can say for an example අපිටම copy construction කරන site එක තියෙනවා. ඒ site එකේ construction එක කරන්න අපි මේ concrete අනන machine එකක් ගන්නවා. concrete අනන machine එකක් ගත්තොත් ඒ concrete අනන machine එක කියලා කියන එක PP එකක්. ඒක ඔයාට ක්ලයන්ට් ගෙන් ක්ලේම් කරගන්න බෑ. ඒක ඔයාලා ගන්න ඇසෙට් එකක්. එහෙම වුණොත් ඒක කැපිටලයිස් කරන්න වෙන්නේ ඇසෙට් එකක් විදියට. අපි හිතමු කොන්ක්‍රීට් හදන මැෂින් එක ෆික්ස් කරන්න ඉන්ජිනියර් කෙනෙක් ඕනේ නා කියලා. ඒ යන කොස්ට් එක ඔයාලට කැපිටලයිස් කරන්න මේ ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකට තමයි මැෂින් එක යූස් කරන්නේ. හැබැයි ඔයා මේ මැෂින් එක ගන්න මේ ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකේ විතරක් නෙමෙයි තව ප්‍රොජෙක්ට්ස් වලටත් යූස් කරන්න. එහෙනම් ඔයා මොකද කරන්නේ? ඒක ෆික්ස් කරන්න ඉන්ජිනියර්ට තාමත් එහෙම ඒක PP එකේ කොස්ට් එකක් විදියට රෙකග්නයිස් කරනවා. හැබැයි construction එක කරන labours ලා ඉන්නවා. මේ building එක හදන්න එන labours ලා. ඒක ඔයාලට capitalize කරන්න බෑ fixed asset එකක් විදියට. ඔයා මොකද කරන්නේ? ඒක වෙනම construction cost කියලා cost account එකට capitalize කරනවා P&L එකට charge කරන්නේ නැතුව. cost එකට කියන්නේ අපිට පුළුවන් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි ගමුකෝ අපි labours ලාට ගෙවනවා කියලා salary එක. salary එක ගෙවද්දී ඔයා cash book එක credit කරලා salary expense කියන expense P&L account එකට දාන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයා ඒක කරන්නේ කන්ස්ට්‍රක්ෂන් account එකක් හදනවා. අපි හිතමුකෝ කන්ස්ට්‍රක්ෂන් එක අපි කරන්නේ දිගන කියලා. එහෙනම් account එකක් open කරනවා ledger එකේ construction at දිගන කියලා. ඒ account එකට asset එකක් විදිහට create කරගෙන යනවා. ඒ project එක ඉවර වෙලා revenue එක recognize කරනකම්. Right? So that's what it says. Any cost incurred to fulfill the contract that fall within the scope of another standard are recognized, are accounted for in accordance with the standard. Right? That means it may be either LKS 2 or LKS 16. Right? Cost incurred to fulfill a contract that do not fall within the scope of another standard and are not identified above are recognized as an asset if all of the following conditions satisfy. ඒ කියන්නේ මම අර කිව්වේ labor cost එක වගේ දේවල්. අන්න මේ වගේ දේවල්. ඒ කියන්නේ labor cost එක. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ගත්තොත් අපි කස්ටමර් කෙනෙක්ගේ building එකක් හදලා දෙන්න construction company එකක් විදිහට agree වුණා නම් අන්නේ customer හදන building එක හදන්න යන labor cost එක අපි recognize කරන්නේ asset එකක් විදිහට. හැබැයි මෙන්න මේ condition ටික satisfy වෙන්න ඕනේ. First one, the cost relate directly to the contract or anticipated contract. This cost should be directly related to the particular contract. ඒ contract එකටම අදාළ cost එක වෙනවා. අපි හිතමු දිග්ගන building එක හදනවා නම් කැන්ඩි වල building එක හදනවා නම් ඒ කැන්ඩි building එක හදන location එකට යන employees ලගේ given labor cost එක. That is specific for that project contract, right? The cost generate or enhance resources of the entity that will be used to satisfy the performance obligation. Why you incur this cost? You want to satisfy that particular performance obligation. Third one, the costs are expected to be recovered. So whatever the cost that you are incurring, you can recover that from whom? From the customers, right? So if those conditions satisfy only, you can capitalize this as an asset in the financial statement, right? Also, the SLFRS 15 say these costs you should not recognize as an asset. These costs you should recognize as an expense. Those are very simple. General and administrative cost. If there's any administrative cost, you can't capitalize it or capitalize it in the sense you can't recognize that as an asset, right? And those have to be charged to P&L. Abnormal cost such as wastages material. If there's any abnormal wastages, or those things you should charge to P&L. Cost relating to the performance obligation that have already been satisfied. And that satisfy වෙලා තියෙන obligation වලට අදාළ cost එකක් තියෙනවා නම් you should recognize as an expense. And cost that the entity cannot distinguish as relating to the satisfy or unsatisfy the performance obligation. If you are incurring a cost, you don't know whether this cost is for the old performance obligation which has already occurred or a new one. So if that is the case, if that particular expense cannot be distinguished between that, you should not recognize that as an asset. You should recognize that as an expense, right? Okay. The next one is, it says now once you capitalize this cost, then අපි මොකද කරන්නේ? සාමාන්‍ය manufacturing company එකක් නම් ඒගොල්ලෝ මොනවද කරන්නේ? items manufacture කරලා ඒ manufacture කරන items ඒගොල්ලෝ inventory එකට ඇවිල්ලා විකුණනකොට cost of sales මාරු කරනවා. එහෙමනේ කරන්නේ, විකුණනකොට expense එකක් විදිහට recognize කරන්නේ. Likewise, whatever the capitalized cost, you should recognize as an expense on a systematic basis with reference to the customer of the goods or the service to be which the assets relates. ඒ කියන්නේ customerට item එක නැත්නම් customerට ඒ control එක යන වෙලාවේදී customerට ඒ good එකේ හරි service එකේ හරි control එක transfer වෙන වෙලාවේදී systematic basis තමයි you have to recognize the cost relating to these assets also. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි හිතමු අපි කැන්ඩි වල building එකක් හැදුවා කියලා. කැන්ඩි වල building එකක් හදන්න labor cost එකක් ගියා 20 million. ඉතින් අපි මොකද කරේ? labor cost එක ගියාම P&L දැම්මද නැහැ. ඇයි ඒක specifically අපි incur කරේ කැන්ඩි building එක හදන්න. ඒ හින්දා මොකද කරේ? cash book එක credit කරලා candy project කියලා account එකක් asset එකක් විදිහට අපි inventory account එකක් වගේ අර account එකට එක capitalize කරගෙන යනවා. අපි හිතමුකෝ candy project එකට අදාළව total revenue එකෙන් 50% එකට income entry එකක් අපි දාගත්තා කියලා. total revenue එකෙන් දැන් 50% හදලා ඉවරයි. එහෙනම් අපි revenue එක recognize කරන 50%. Then you can recognize that particular labor cost to your cost of sales account. Systematic basis expense කරන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් set එකේ තියාගන්න ඕනේ ඒ කාර්ය විදියට systematic basis you should recognize to the P&L account, right? The next thing is loss making contracts. What do you mean by loss making contracts? සමහර වෙලාවලට අපිට contracts accept කරන්න වෙනවා loss making උත්. දැන් අපි හිතමු උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපිට හදනවා government එකෙන් අපිට project එකක් දෙනවා අපේ company එකට government එකට factory building එකක් හදන්න. ඒකට මොනවාද access වෙන road එකක් හදන්න කියලා අපිට project දෙකක් දෙනවා. අපි දන්නවා access වෙන road එක හදන එක අපිට loss. හැබැයි අර ලොකු project එක හම්බෙච්ච ඉන්න අපි loss making project එකක් වුණත් accept කරනවා. Right? In the loss making වුණත් සමහර වෙලාවට අපි project accept කරනවා. Right? Because we are getting good cash into our hands. නේද 100 million 200 million 500 million projects එනකොට loss the profit the කියන එක ගැන එච්චර consider කරන්නේ නැහැ. They accept why they are getting huge cash flows. Right? So what happened in loss making contracts, how to recognize a revenue in relation to the loss making contract. So standards say even though it is a loss making contract, standard is not specifically tell how to recognize the revenue. Revenue recognition provision will be happen as it is like we discussed in the previous week. Right? Only thing, you should recognize that particular loss as a treatment what you have done under LKS 37 when it comes to the onerous contract. Can you remember the onerous contracts we discussed? Right? What do you mean by the onerous contract? Onerous contract means when the particular contract cost exceed the contract benefit, we call that sort of a contract as onerous contract. Say for an example, you entering into a rent agreement with one other party which is a non-cancelable lease. You can't cancel it. You have agreed to stay there for 3 years. But after 2 years you feel this place is not good to run my business. I should leave from the business and I'm leaving the particular place. But still, as per the agreement, you need to continue to make the payment. So in that case, we call that agreement as an onerous contract because why? You are not getting any benefit from that building, but still you have to incur a cost. So the LKS 37 says what you should do, you should make a provision in the financial statement for the rent, monthly rent into the 12 months. You should immediately make a provision for that because it's an onerous contract. Likewise, if there's a loss making contract also, they're telling this comes under the definition of an onerous contract, recognize a provision in respect of that particular loss. Right? That's what it says. Where a total contract costs are expected to exceed the contract price, that will be loss making. SLFRS 15 does not provide specific guidance on loss making contracts. Right? Loss making contracts. The standard guides applies and therefore revenue is recognized in accordance with the 5-step model and costs are recognized as detailed above. So revenue is continued to be recognized by using the 5-step model, but the cost of that particular asset or the particular contract is recognized as follows. A loss-making contract does, however, fall within the LKS 37 definition of an onerous contract, and accordingly, provision is made for the least net cost of existing contract. Right? That means for the net cost, you recognize immediately. You make a provision in the financial statement. So that's how you should recognize the cost in relation to the loss-making contracts. Right? So next we moving to the presentation and disclosure. Right? Once you see the presentation and disclosure, you may come to conclusion that we have come to the final part of the standard. But in this case, no. Still we have to do some additional part under the standard. But we'll see what are the presentation and disclosure requirement. Right? So the presentation, what you should present in the financial statement. Standards say you should recognize a contract liability. Right? How you should recognize a contract liability? In some cases, the customer may pay you amount in advance. We have done the questions also in the previous section. Some customers are paying us the amount a little in advance. Right? So in that case, you should recognize that as a contract liability unless you recognize the revenue, because you have not, you can recognize the revenue. The performance obligation has not satisfied. In that case, you can't recognize the revenue. Then you should recognize that amount what you receive as what? You should recognize that as a contract liability. Also, some customers, even though we've done the business, some customers are not paying us. In that case, we recognize that as a contract asset or a receivable balance. So those amounts you need to be present in the financial statements, right? Then what else you need to disclose? Look at the disclosure requirement, right? These are the things that you should disclose. Revenue recognized from the contracts with the customers, right? You should recognize how much of a revenue that we recognize during the period from the the contract with the customers, right? And any impairment losses recognized for the receivable or current the trade receivable balances, right? Sometimes, even though we recognize the revenue in the financial statements, right? For some, in respect of some customers, we debit the trade receivable account and credit the revenue account, but still we are not collect the money from them, right? In that case, if you are unable to collect that money for a long period of time, we may need to make a provision against that, right? We need to make a provision against that. So you should recognize if there's any provision like that. Then the opening and the closing balance of the receivables, if there's any opening closing balances and the movements of that, right? And if there's any movement of the current assets and the current liabilities, especially trade receivable and trade the revenue received in advance, that need to show, and revenue recognized in reporting period that was included in the current liability balance at the beginning of the period, right? That means sometimes, as we discussed earlier, sometimes the customers may pay us the amount little in advance. In that case, initially we recognize that as a liability in the financial statement, and by the time we deliver the good or the service, or when the control of the goods is passing to the other party, we should recognize the revenue. So you should show that moment, how we recognize the revenue reporting period, what is included as the contract liability, and how it come to a revenue at the end of the period. Revenue recognized in reporting period from performance obligations satisfy previous period, right? In previous period, whatever the performance obligation satisfy, how we recognize the revenue, that you need to disclose in the financial statement. So likewise, you can read what are the other disclosures that you should make in the financial statement in relation to the revenue, right? So those kind of things you can disclose in the financial statement. Just read, and you can refer your standard book also for the additional readings, right? So with that, basically we have done with the revenue part, but especially we need to focus on few areas in relation to the revenue recognition, right? Because when it comes to the revenue recognition, it's a sort of a broader concept. In that case, we should know what are the other aspects, right? Which we need to focus when we recognizing the revenue, special cases, right? Okay, the first part under the special case is we call it warranty, right? Normally we are getting warranties, right? So you can see the standard identify there are like 3 types of warranties where we can get, or we can give to a customers, right? First one, the standard warranty that provide assurance that the transferred item will function as identified for a specified period of time. Normally, assume that when we take some item from, say we take electrical item, or say refrigerator or a washing machine from the supplier, electrical equipment, the supply, right? They will give us, and we ask, do we have any warranty? They will say, yeah, we have 2-year warranty for you. If anything happens, just bring the item back, we will repair it, or whatever it is, right? They come up with that. That is called the standard warranty, the normal warranty. The second one, an extended or the additional warranty that the customer has the option to purchase. For some assets, some companies are giving, they're saying, yes sir, normally we give you 2-year warranty. If you need additional 1-year warranty, you may have to pay. That is called an extended warranty. right? Additional warranty, the customer has the option to pay. The customer has the particular option to pay, right? Then an extended warranty that is provided as no cost and provide an additional service beyond the standard warranty, right? If some additional warranty is giving, right, an extended warranty that is provided at no cost and provides an additional service beyond the standard warranty. Sometimes we are not charging from the customer, but still අපි කියන අවුරුදු දෙකයි උනාට අපි ස්පෙෂල් එකක් විදිහට අවුරුදු 3ක් යනකම් ප්‍රොවිෂන් එකක් දෙනවා කියලා. Right? Okay. So in the case of the first case, that is the normal standard warranty, you know that warranties where we recognize that under the LCase 37 when we make a provision. If we make a sale under a warranty, we should make a provision in the financial statement in relation to the first category. Make a provision. That's how we treat. But remember, in case of the second and the third scenarios, in the second two cases, the warranties provided identify as a separate performance obligation. Remember why? The customer has option to purchase additionally, or in the second case they are giving an additional amount. So it is also like a separate performance obligation. It's not normal warranty. Now take the second point. The second point says the customer has option to purchase, which means again I am as the seller, I am agreeing him to do an additional service. So it's an additional performance obligation, right? So again you should follow the 5-step model, and from that, from your selling price, you should allocate particular amount for this additional performance obligation as well, right? Because this also should recognize as an additional performance obligation. ඒ කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට item එකක් විකුණනකොට අපි additionally purchase කරන්න දීලා තියෙනවා warranty එක. අනේ කියන්නේ performance obligation. අපි හිතමුකෝ අපි electric item එකක් විකුණනවා එච්චරයිනේ. එතකොට අපේ performance obligation එක එකයි. මොනවද electrical item එක විකුණනවා ඉවරයි. හැබැයි ඒ විකුණනකොට එයාට additionally purchase කරන්න දීලා තිබ්බොත් additional ගන්න එක. එතන performance obligation දෙකක් තියෙනවා. So when you allocate your transaction price, careful about that additional performance obligation as well. So remember, that is very important when it comes to the warranty. You want to see what sort of a warranty the customer has been given, right? Okay. Second one, the principal versus agent. I think you may have learned about this as an agency theory. The principal and the agent. Who is known as the principal and who is known as an agent? We take a simple example, right? Sometime you may have seen especially now you all have seen the website like Daras, right? Or else the website like ikman.lk, right? Likewise, through that websites, what happen is, now especially Alibaba, right? That website, from that you can log into the Alibaba website and you can purchase whatever good you want, right? So what the Alibaba website does, they do facilitate and they make a platform for you to find the item that you want. But is Alibaba is going to deliver you the item, or the particular manufacturer gives you the item? That is particular manufacturer. Now say for an example, if I want to buy in simple, say if I want to buy a mobile from Softlogic, through assume that through Alibaba you can purchase it. Through Alibaba you make the order. Softlogic is the one to deliver that particular product for us. But Alibaba just he work as an agent. Who is the principal of this transaction is Softlogic, right? So likewise, when you recognize the revenue, now say for an example, if that particular mobile phone is selling by the Softlogic, who should recognize the revenue of the selling of mobile phone? Is it Softlogic or is it Alibaba? That is the point that we should clarify here under the principal versus agent. So who is the principal and who is the agent? And principal what he should recognize, agent what he should recognize. So this part is giving the answer for that. right? An entity must establish in any transaction whether it is acting as a principal or agent. Principal, right? It is a principal if it controls the promised goods or a service before it is transferred to the customers. This is called the principal. Principal is the one who promised goods or service before it is transferred to the customer. When the performance obligation is satisfied, the entity recognizes the revenue equal to gross amount of the consideration of which expected to be entitled for those goods or the service. Then in our example, SoftLogic is the one who promised to deliver the goods to the customer. In that case, SoftLogic should recognize the revenue of the mobile phone once they deliver the goods to the customer, right? It is acting as an agent if its performance obligation is to arrange for the provision of the goods or a service to another party, right? What Alibaba does, they do arrange the service on behalf of the other one. Who is the Alibaba then? They are the agent. Can they recognize the selling sale proceed of the sale proceed of the mobile phone? They can't. What they can recognize? They can recognize a commission for that, right? Satisfaction of this performance obligation will give rise recognition of a revenue equal to fee or a commission. So here they are not recognizing the gross revenue. They recognize what? The fee or the commission. Here when it comes to the principal, he recognizes what? He recognizes the revenue equal to the gross amount of the consideration. He recognizes that as the gross amount of the consideration, where the agents each recognize the fee or the commission once the performance obligation is satisfied, right? So indicators that seller control the goods or a service before transfer the customer, and therefore principal. So these are the indicators how you can easily identify whether this is a principal or a agent. Principal, these are the conditions or these are the indicators where you can identify this directly, or you can call it right? This is a principal because that principal has these characteristics, right? The seller is primarily responsible for fulfilling the promise to provide the specific goods or services, right? If particular seller is promising, right, responsible, if he is the responsible in fulfill the promise to provide the specific good or a service, then he is the principal because he is the one who is promising. Now say for an example, if you purchase a particular the item from the Alibaba website or Dara's website, when you purchase that, who agreed finally to purchase that? Now simply tell me. Now you can see in these days it's very popular, Pick Me Foods or the they are delivering, right? Uber Eats, right? Who now when we make an order through the Uber to purchase or buy a particular food, say if I want to buy a pizza, I can order through whom? Not pizza is delivering, but assume that if I want to buy some food from particular food store, I can order through the Uber Eats. So through Uber Eats or through Uber Eats, when it's ordering, who agreed to deliver us the goods? Is it the Uber? No, that particular restaurant, right? So he is the one who responsible to fulfill the promise. If that is the case, you can recognize him as the principal. Second one, the seller has the inventory risk before the specialized good or service has transferred to the customer, or sometime maybe after, right? Who has the responsibility? The inventory risk has with who? The seller. If the seller has the inventory risk, which we call him a principal. Then in the case of Uber Eats or Pick Me Eats, what happened? The delivery of the goods is with whom? With the particular food stall. In that case, they have the inventory risk, right? Okay. Third one, the seller has discretion to setting the price, right? The seller can determine the price of the particular product, right? Rather the agent. If the seller can determine that, that means he should be the principal, right? Okay, though these conditions will help you to identify whether it is a principal or not. So you can highlight these in the standard, which will help you, right, to answer at the examination, right? Okay, you can see the question number 30. An entity operates a website that enables customers to purchase goods from range of suppliers like Alibaba, right? The supplier deliver directly to a customer who have paid in advance. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි ගත්තොත් අපි දරාස් හරි එහෙම නැත්නම් Alibaba එකකින් බඩුවක් ගන්නකොට හරි purchase කරද්දී we need to pay it, right? Likewise here also they pay, and the entity receive commission of 10% for the sale price. The entity's website also process payment from the customer to the supplier at prices set by the supplier. Look at the entity has no further obligation to the customer after arranging the product to be supplied. Is the entity is a principal or agent? As you believe, it's a principal or the agent? Yes, it seems it's principal. Why? The first thing is entity operates website, right? Customer to purchase the supplier. The supplier deliver directly to the customer. The supplier is the one who is deliver the product to the customer. So he has what? Has the promising. He is the one who promised to deliver the responsibility to the customer, right? Second one you can remember. You can see. The second point you can see, the entity's website also process payments from the customer supplier price set by the supplier. The entity has no further obligation to customer after arranging the products to be supplied. See, the entity has no further obligation. That means until such time they have what? The control. And they have the risk of the inventory, right? See, the entity has no further obligation of the customer after arranging for the products to be supplied, right? So that means the control risk is until it goes, the risk is with them. Third one, you can see the supplier has set up the price. Supplier is the one who has set up the price. So in that case, supplier is the one who set up the price. So in that case, that is also done by the entity. So entity is called the principal. So you can read the answer. The following points are relevant. The supplier is primarily responsible for fulfilling the promise to provide the goods to the customer. The entity is neither required to provide the goods if the supplier fails to transfer them to the customer, nor responsibility for the accepting of the goods. So if the supplier is not providing goods, this entity does not have any responsibility lying with them. Second one, the entity does not take inventory risk at any time before or after the goods are transferred to the customer. It does not commit itself to obtain the goods from supplier before they are purchased by the customer, and does not accept any responsibility for damage or the return of the goods. So that means the inventory risk is also with the entity. The entity does not have discretion in establishing price for the supplier's goods. The sales price is set by the supplier, right? Entity is no more liable to put up the price, so it is with the supplier, right? And the entity would therefore conclude that it is acting as an agent, and that is only revenue to be recognized should be the commission. So this entity is recognized as who? Agent. The supplier is recognized as the principal, right? If any mistake happen, just keep it in mind again. Here what happens is entity operates the website. The person who operate the website, they are not getting the inventory risk, right? Remember, the entity in the sense, the entity is the party who operate the website, right? Sorry if it like get complicated. The entities operates the website, right? That enable the customer to purchase from the supplier. So the supplier has the supplier has the, not the entity, the supplier has the obligation to deliver the goods to the customer, and the supplier has the risk of the inventory, and also supplier is the one who's set up the prices. So the entity can't do anything, so entity works as the agent. So entity can't recognize the revenue, he should recognize the commission what they get from this transaction, right? Okay, right. Then next we will moving to the repurchase agreement, right? Bit of a confused area, but we'll try to make it understandable, right? Repurchase agreement. What do you mean by repurchase agreement? Repurchase agreement in the sense you sell particular asset, right, with the intention then to repurchase that particular, right, with the intention to repurchase agreement. That means you are selling an asset with the intention to repurchase. So can you recognize this as a revenue when you sell with the view to repurchase? If you sell with the view to repurchase, can you recognize this as a revenue, or else if there's any other accounting treatment, right? We'll see. So this kind of repurchase agreements also recognized by this standard in 3 ways, right? Under the repurchase agreement, an entity sells an asset and promise or has option. Remember, right? Promise or option. 2 things. Promise in the sense they will definitely repurchase the asset. Option in the sense either they will use or not, right? So repurchase agreement, an entity sells an asset and promise or has the option to repurchase it. Repurchase agreement generally comes in 3 forms. First one, an entity has obligation to repurchase the asset. Remember here what it has, an obligation. Entity has an obligation to repurchase the asset. That means entity is selling the asset, right? Entity is selling the asset. Entity is selling the asset and they have obligation. That means they have promised to repurchase. The second one, entity has the right to repurchase. It's not an obligation. Remember, right? Right in the sense it's not an obligation. They have an option, right? So here you can use the word a forward contract when it comes to an obligation, right? But when it comes to right to repurchase, you can call it as a call option. Third one, entity must repurchase the asset if requested to do so by the customer. If requested to do so by the customer. If customer request, you can purchase it. So you can call it put option. Put option. If he wants, he can put it as. If he want to put it as. The second one is the call option. That means you can ask customer to pay. But third one, say the customer has option to pay it back to us. Customer will ask us to pay. Right? So these are 3 scenarios, 3 natures of the repurchase agreement. Right? We'll see what is the accounting treatment for that. Standard C, in the case of forward or the call option, right? That means in these first two scenarios, in the case of these 2, look at this, in the case of these 2, in the case of forward or call option, in the case of forward or a call option, the customer does not obtain control of the asset. In these 2 scenarios, customer is not getting the control of the asset. Why? The first one, in the sense that the seller is agreed to repurchase. In that case, the seller can't recognize that as revenue, because he agreed, no, I'm going to repurchase this from you. Second one, entity has right to repurchase. I have the right to repurchase. If it comes to a particular price, I have the right to repurchase. Right? In the case of the forward or the call option, the customer does not obtain the control. Remember, the customer does not get the control of the asset, even if it has physical possession. Maybe you have already given the asset to the customer, but still you can't recognize that as a revenue in the financial statement because these are repurchase. Under repurchase, we discussed 3 points. First one is you agree to repurchase under forward contract. That means you are obliged, you have obligation to repurchase. Say you sell asset today, after 3 years you tell I purchase this. That means you have obligation. So the control, even though the asset has gone, the possession, අපි කියන්නේ asset එක නැත්නම් asset එක කියන්නේ possession එක. ඒ asset එක නැත්නම් possession එක customer ට ගියාට ඒවට recognize කරගන්න බෑ මේක revenue එකක් විදියට. මොකද ඔයා agree වෙලා තියෙනවා අවුරුදු දෙකකින් ආයෙ මේක purchase කරනවා කියලා. Right? So standards say they will accounted as a lease in accordance with LK 16 if purchase price is below the original selling price. Remember. හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න. මේ අනුව තමයි ඔයගේ accounting treatment එක ඔයා decide කරන්න ඕනේ. standard එක කියනවා ඔයාට තියෙන්නේ repurchase option එකක් නා. හැබැයි මේ repurchase option එක තියෙන්නේ එක්ක forward contract එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, එක්ක call option එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔන්න ඔය දෙකෙන් එකක් නම් ඔයාට තියෙනවා ඔයා මේකයි repurchase කරන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාලා දැන් asset එකක් තියෙනවා, මේ asset එක දීලා තියෙන්නේ මොකටද? හරියට නිකන් lease එකක් දුන්නා වගේ. හැබැයි මොන situation එකේදීද if repurchase price is below the original price. Remember, this is also very important. Repurchase price is below the original selling price. අපි හිතමුකෝ original මේක 100 million වලට විකුණුවේ. අපි ඒක purchase කරන්න යන්නේ 90 million වලට. 100 million වලට දීලා 90 million වලට තමයි ගන්න යන්නේ. අන්න එහෙම වෙනවා නම් මේක lease එකක් විදිහට තමයි recognize කරන්න ඕනේ under SLFRS 16. Still we have not discussed about this. Remember that. Remember these points carefully. Just highlighting your standard book. Then according to the question you can determine from which point they are asking the question. Right? Because you should clarify the accounting treatment. Right? But the standard say if a lease is in accordance with, you should recognize this as an SLFRS 16 as a lease if the repurchase price is below the original selling price. If it is below the original selling price, you should recognize that as what? As a lease agreement. Second one, it says you should recognize this as a finance arrangement if the repurchase price is equal or greater than the selling price. The standard say if the repurchase price is equal or greater than the selling price, you should recognize this as what? As a finance arrangement. It is not under the SLFRS 16. It has to be recognized as a finance arrangement. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා 100 million එකට asset එකක් දීලා අවුරුදු දෙකකින් ඔයා ඒක purchase කරන්න 120 million වලට නම් එහෙම වුණොත් මොකද කරන්නේ? Right? So then you should recognize that as a financing arrangement. Okay, we'll look at this the example. The example is basically talks about this financial arrangement, right? Since we have not done the SLFRS 16 so far, you can refer it once you done the SLFRS 16 again. But for the time being, we'll look at how to treat for a financing arrangement. Right? Look at this example. An entity enter into contract with the customer for sale of a tangible asset, maybe a machinery. We'll say on 1st January 2019 for 100 million. The contract includes a call option. This has a call option that gives the entity the right to repurchase the asset for 110 million on or before 31st December 2019. This entity has option to purchase this for 110 million. Look at this. If the purchase price is equal or greater than the original selling price, that's sort of a situation, right? Because original selling price is 100, the repurchase price is 110, it is greater than that. So you have to recognize that as a finance component, right? But how to treat this? This means the customer does not obtain control of the asset because repurchase option means that it is limited in its liability to use and obtain benefit from the assets. So what happened? There's an option then to purchase it back. They have a call option, right? So the customer, you can't recognize that as a what? Revenue, because it has a call option. How you should recognize? As control has not been transferred, the entity accounts for the transaction as a finance arrangement because the exercise price is above the original selling price. Exercise price is above the original selling price. The entity continue to recognize the asset and recognize the cash received as a financial liability. So what they want to do now, by the time they selling the asset, right? By the time they sold this asset on 1st January 2019, they have received 100 million cash. So cash book debit, and they should not recognize debit the cash book, and they should not credit that as a revenue because the control has not passed yet. They should recognize that as a liability in the financial statement. So the entity continues to recognize asset and recognize cash received as a financial liability, right? So this asset they should recognize, they should not de-recognize. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් අපි හිතමු මේගොල්ලෝ දැන් විකුණලා තියෙන machine එකක් නේ, machine particular මේ tangible asset එකක් නේ, see tangible asset එකක් අපි ගාව තියෙනවා නම් අපි කොහෙද ඒක recognize කරගන්නේ? අපි හිතමු අපේ inventory එක ඇතුලේ තිබ්බා කියලා, නැත්නම් අපේ PPE එකේ තිබ්බා කියලා. If it is included in a PPE, තාමත් එක PPE එකේම තියාගන්න බෑ. ඒ asset එකේ control එක මාරු වුණොත් විතරයි ඔයාලට PPE එක de-recognize කරන්න පුළුවන්. මෙතනදී එහෙම control එක මාරු වෙලා නැහැ. PPE එක දෙමේ asset එක. right? එතකොට ඒක recognize කරන්න ඕනේ. අපේ asset එක එහෙමම තියෙනවා. සල්ලි හම්බෙච්ච එක liability එකක් විදිහට අපි recognize කරනවා. The difference of 10 million is recognized as an interest expense. If on 31st December 2019 option lapses unexercised, very well අපි මේ option එක ගත්තේ නැත්තම්, the customer now obtain control of the asset, the entity will de-recognize the asset and recognize revenue of 110 million. That is the 100 million already received plus 10 million charged to the interest. So how they recognize that? very වෙලාවත් මේ option එක අපේ විකුණපු company එක exercise කරේ නැත්තම් control එක මාරු වෙනවා කාටද? customerට ඒ දවසට පුළුවන් වාට මොකද්ද මේ revenue එක recognize කරගන්න in the financial statements. That is in relation to the repurchase agreement, right? So under repurchase we discussed about this first two parts, isn't it? අපි කතා කරේ මෙන්න මේ දෙන්න, right? දැන් අපි බලමු එයා මොනවද කියන්නේ if it is a put option. What is put option? An entity must repurchase the asset if required to do so by the customer. Customer කිව්වොත් repurchase කරනවා. Customer කිව්වොත් repurchase කරනවා. That part is comes under this section. What happened? If the entity is obliged to repurchase at the request of the customer, a put option, it must consider whether or not the customer is likely to exercise that option. So you should know මේ වගේ වෙලාවක බලන්න, right? customer මේ option එක ගයිද නැද්ද? ඒ කියන්නේ මෙහෙම customer තමයි කියන්නේ මට මේ asset එක එපා ඔයාම purchase කරන්න කියලා. Right? So you want to look at whether the customer is likely to exercise this option. Customer likely to exercise. Guide the option. Depending on that, you want to determine. Right? Okay. If the repurchase price is lower than the original selling price, original අපි විකුණේ 100. එයා කියනවා repurchase කරන්න මේක 80 වලට දෙන්න මම ඔයාලට ආයි කියලා. අන්න එහෙමනම්. If the customer does not have significant economic initiative to exercise the option, the contract should be accounted for as an outright sale with a right to return. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් එයා ගත්ත asset එක කීයද? 100 වලට. ඒකයි දෙන්න කියන්නේ කීයද? 80 million වලට. ඒ කියන්නේ if the repurchase price is lower than the original selling price. විකුණේ 100 million වලට. දෙන්න යන්නේ 80 million වලට. එහෙම වුණොත් එහෙම customer unlikely to exercise. අන්න එහෙම වුණොත් you should recognize that as a outright sales with a right to return. Outright sale with right to return. return කරන right එකකුත් එක්ක තියෙන sale එකක් විදිහට මේක recognize කරන්න කියලා කියනවා. Right. If the customer is considered to have a significant economic incentive to exercise the option, the entity, see the first one is says customer does not have significant economic incentive. The second one, if the customer is considered to have significant economic incentive to exercise the option, the customer is considered to have a significant economic incentive to To exercise the option, the entity should account for this as a lease in accordance with LK 16. Right? Next one it says, if the repurchase price is greater than or equal to the original selling price. Repurchase price එක මොනවා වෙනවද? Greater than or equal to the selling price. If the repurchase price is above the expected market value, the contract is treated as a financing arrangement. අර ඉස්සල්ලා වගේ මොකද කරන්න කියන්නේ? If the repurchase price is above the expected market value, when you want to look at the expected market value, right? Expected market value. We'll do an example. The contract is treated as a finance component. If the repurchase price is equal or less than the expected market value, right? The customer doesn't have a significant economic incentive to exercise the right. The contract is accounted for sale with the right to return. So that's how the accounting treatment specify. Okay, we look at this example in relation to the second part. The same contract as above included instead of put option that obliged the entity to repurchase the asset at the customer's request for rupees 90 million on or before 31st December 2019. Now what happened? Earlier we talked about the call option, right? Here it has a put option. The same contract as above includes instead of put option that obliged the entity to repurchase asset at the customer's request for 90 million, right? So the customer will request you to purchase the asset back for 90 million on or before 31st December 2019, at which time the market value is expected to be 80 million. By that time the market value of this asset is 80 million. So which point you should recognize? If the purchase price is equal or less than the expected market value, or if the repurchase price is above the expected market value. See, the repurchase price is 90, expected market value is 80 million. So how you should recognize? It comes under the second point. In this case, the customer has significant economic incentive to exercise the put option because the repurchase price exceeds the market value at repurchase date. This means that control does not pass to the customer. Since the customer will be exercised the put option, this limits its ability to use or obtain the benefit of the asset. In this situation, the entity accounts for the transaction as a lease in accordance with SLFRS 16. The asset has been leased to the customer for the period up to the repurchase, and difference of 10 million will be accounted for the payments received under the operating lease. So this is also you should recognize just as an operating lease. So that is the second part of the second subtopic under this special scenarios. The next part we going to discuss is consignment arrangement. Consignment arrangement. Consignment කියන්නේ ඉක්ිනීමේ හෝ ආපසු එළීමේ පදනම මත කියන එක නේද? Consignment arrangements. Right. So what we have to learn under the consignment arrangement? So what happened in consignment arrangements? In consignment arrangement, one party is selling their goods to another party, but still he is being the dealer. He has to sell that goods to the end user. So the particular, say the X is selling goods to Y be the dealer, and Y is the one who is selling that to the end customer, right? So here we should recognize it in which point the X should recognize the revenue in the financial statements, right? So under the consignment arrangement in SLFRS 15 says, right, when a product is delivered to customer under the consignment agreement, here the customer in the sense the dealer, not the end customer, the customer does not obtain control of the product at the point in time, so no revenue is recognized upon the delivery. That means, say for an example, if X is selling its goods on the consignment basis to Y, X can't recognize the revenue because Y is not the end user. He need to sell that to third party under the consignment arrangement, right? Okay, so what are the indicators this kind of a consignment arrangement, right? The first one, it says the product is controlled by the entity until a specified event occurs, such as the product is sold on or the specified period expires. That means now one party is selling to the dealer, saying he can't do any modification. This is how you want to sell as it is to the third parties, right? Because he is the one who controls the product. Second one, the entity can require the return of the product or transfer it to another party, right? That entity can require to return the product. They can return the product or give it to another party. The customer or the dealer or the distributor does not have unconditional obligation to pay for the product. That means no advance is paid. Once it's sold to the third party, they can recognize. So until that is sold to the third party, the entity should not recognize the revenue in their financial statement unless the item is selling by the dealer to the end customer. The following apply where it is considered that the control of the inventory has been transferred to the dealer. In the situation වලදී මොනවා කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? විකුණපු එක්කෙනාට පුළුවන් එක රෙකග්නයිස් කරන්න යාගේ රෙවෙනියු එක. මොකද ඒතකොට ඩිසයිඩ් කරනවා ඩීලර්ට කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක ගිහින් කියලා. දැන් කන්සයින්මන්ට් ගුඩ් එකේදී කියන්නේ කන්සයින්මන්ට් ගුඩ්ස් වලදී ඩීලර්, ඒ කියන්නේ කන්සයින්මන්ට් ගුඩ් එකේදී ඉස්සලම ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එක විකුණන කෙනා එක ඩීලර් කෙනෙක් තුව තමයි කස්ටමර්ට විකුණන්නේ. ඩීලර්ට කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක යන්න ඕනේ විකුණන මනුස්සයාට ඒක රෙවෙනියු එකක් විදිහට රෙකග්නයිස් කරගන්න. In that case he should not recognize until the control is transferred. But in this situation it can be concluded that the revenue can be recognized because the control has transferred. So what are the situations where the control has transferred? The first one, the inventory should be recognized. Here it says the following apply where it concludes that the control of inventory has been transferred to the dealer. When the control has transferred to the dealer, this has to be done. Inventory should be recognized as such as the dealer statement of the financial state, such in the dealer's financial state position, right, together with corresponding liability to the manufacturer. Because in this case control has transferred from seller to the dealer, right? In that case, if the control has passed to the dealer, he should recognize this in the inventory of the dealer's books of accounts and corresponding liability. කියන්නේ කවුරු හරි X කියන එක්කෙනා ඩීලර් කෙනෙක්ගේ through නම් බඩු ටික විකුණන. දැන් X කියන්නේ manufacturer කෙනෙක් කියන්නකො. එයා හදන්නේ කාර්. ඒ කාර් ටික හදලා ඒ කාර් ටික ඩීලර් කෙනෙක් through විකුණන්නේ කස්ටමර්ස්ලාට. එහෙමනම් කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක මාරු වෙන්න ඕනේ. කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක කියලා කියන්නේ අයිටම් එකේ කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක මාරු වුණොත් තමයි මැනුෆැක්චරින් කම්පැනි එකට රෙකග්නයිස් කරන්න පුළුවන් එක රෙවෙනියු එකක් විදියට. right? එතකොට ඩීලර්ට රෙකග්නයිස් කරගන්න බෑ. ඩීලර් රෙකග්නයිස් කරගන්නේ නැහැ මේක ඉන්වෙන්ටරි එකක් විදියට unless the control is passed to him. ඒ කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක පාස් වුණාට පස්සේ තමයි කාර් මැනුෆැක්චරින් කරන කම්පැනි එකට සේල් එකක් විදියට මේක රෙකග්නයිස් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. right? එහෙම කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වෙලා නම් ඩීලර් කරන්න ඕනේ ඉන්වෙන්ටරි එකක් විදියට මේක රෙකග්නයිස් කරගන්න ඕනේ ඩීලර්ගේ බුක්ස් වල because control has transferred. right? Together with the corresponding liability to the manufacturer. ඒ කියන්නේ එයා එතකොට ඒ විකුණපු සල්ලි ටික කාට ගෙවන්න ඕනේද විකුණලා. ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් ඉන්වෙන්ටරි එකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ටික ඉස්සරහට විකුණලා ඒ ටික ගෙවන්න ඕනේ again back to the manufacturer. right? Any deposit should be deducted from the liability and excess classified as a trade payable. So what he should do is any deposit he has made, he can deduct from the liability and excess should be classified as the trade payable. right? Where it is concluded that the control of the delivery have not yet been transferred. then we can අපි ඉස්සලම කාර් එක manufacture කරන කෙනා මොනවද කරන්නේ? කාර් එක manufacture කරලා ඒක ඩීලර්ට දෙනවා sell කරන්න කියලා. තාම ඉන්වෙන්ටරි එකේ අයිතිය තියෙනවනේ කාම මැනුෆැක්චරර්ත් එක්ක. මොකද දන්නවද? ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් සාමාන්‍ය කන්සයින්මන්ට් ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් එකක් ගහනකොට කන්සයින්මන්ට් ඇග්‍රීමන්ට් එකේදී අපිට දෙනවා පීරියඩ් එකක්. මාස 3ක් ඇතුළත මේ කාර් ටික විකුණන්න නැත්නම් මට ආයෙ ඉවන්න. මාස 3ක් යනකොට එයාගේ කාර් ටික විකුණලා ආයෙ ඉවර තිබුණේ නැත්නම් ඒ කියන්නේ එයා ඒකේ රිස්ක් එක ගන්නවා කියන එක කන්ට්‍රෝල් එක ට්‍රාන්ස්ෆර් වෙනවා. එතකොට රෙවෙනියු එක රෙකග්නයිස් කරන්න පුළුවන් කාර් මැනුෆැක්චරර්ට. හැබැයි කාර් මැනුෆැක්චරර් ඒක රෙකග්නයිස් කරන්නේ නැතුව ඉන්නවා control එක pass වෙන්නේ නැත්තම්. So in this case the second point it says if the control has not transferred, car manufacturer again control එක transfer වෙලා නැත්තම් what he should do, the inventory should not be included in the dealer statement of financial position until the transfer of the control has been taken place. එහෙනම් ඒ වෙලාවේ inventory එක විදිහට ඒක recognize කරගන්න ඕනේ කවුද? car manufacturer by. Right? Next one, any deposit should be included under the other receivables, right? If there's any deposit from the customer, that has to be recognized as a asset in the financial statement by them, right? So any deposit should be included under the other receivable. So he should recognize that as a receivable. එයාගෙන් තියෙන එකක් receivable එකක් විදිහට තමයි recognize කරගන්න ඕනේ. deposit එකක් කරලා තියෙනවා නම් කවුද? dealer. Right? Okay. Look at this example. A wholesaler supplies goods to a retailer on consignment basis. Wholesaler කෙනෙක් supply කරනවා goods to the retailer on consignment basis. The wholesaler retains the title until the goods are sold to the retailer. කාට ගාවද title එක අයිතිය තියෙන්නේ, ownership එක තියෙන්නේ with the wholesaler. The retailer does not pay the wholesaler until the goods are sold and any unsold can be returned. That means on the consignment basis. In this situation, control of the goods is not transferred to the retailer until the goods are sold to the end user. So it is only at the point that the wholesaler can recognize the revenue. කියන්නේ wholesaler revenue එක recognize කරන්න නම් මොකද වෙන්න ඕනේ? Until the control of the goods transferred to the retailer, he should wait without recognizing the revenue. Okay. Question number 15. Asia Limited owns number of car dealerships throughout a geographical area. The terms of the arrangement between the dealership and the manufacturer are: legal title passes when the cars are either used by the entity for demonstration purpose or sold to a third party. Right? That is the only place where the legal title goes. So in the consignment good point of view, the legal title, it doesn't talk about anything about the legal title, right? So the control should pass. Second one, the dealer has the right to return the vehicle to the manufacturer without any penalty. Asia has rarely exercised this right in the past, right? The dealer has the right to return vehicles to the manufacturer without penalty, right? Third one, the transfer price is based on the manufacturer's list price at the date of the delivery. The entity makes substantial interest-free deposit based on the number of the cars held. Right? The entity makes substantial interest-free deposits based on the number of cars held. Should the asset and liability be recognized by Asia Limited at the date of the delivery? Right? Asia Limited කියන්නේ කවුද? Asia owns number of car dealership, right, throughout a geographical area. The terms of the arrangement between the dealership and the manufacturer are, එතකොට Asia Limited කියන්නේ dealer, right? එයාත් එක්ක manufacturer එකත් එක්ක තියෙනවා legal title passes when the cars and either used by the entity for the demonstration purpose or sold to a third party. Right? Legal title එක මේ car එකක් ගත්තොත් ඒ car එකේ legal title එක transfer වෙන්නේ when the cars are either used by the entity for demonstration purpose or sold to the third party. ඒකුණොත් තමයි pass වෙන්නේ. දැන් මෙතන අපිට අහන්නේ should the entity asset and liability to be recognized by the Asia Limited as at the delivery. කොහොමද අපි asset එකක් liability එකක් recognize කරන්න කියලා කිව්වේ මොන point එකකදීද? asset එකක් inventory එකක් විදිහට recognize කරන්න කියලා කිව්වේ මොන point එකේදීද? right? So here it talks about uh, how you should recognize this. Now here we in the earlier we recognize whether the dealer should recognize this as an asset and liability, in the sense the manufacturing company has sold the goods to the dealer. That means now here what happened is Asia Limited owns number of car dealerships. එයාට තියෙනවා car විකුණන්න dealership එකක්. car හැමෝගෙම manufacture කරලා හම්බ වෙන cars එයාට විකුණන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Geographical area. The terms of the agreement between the dealership is also given. ඒකට අපෙන් අහනවා right. manufacturer දෙනවනේ goods ටික කාටද dealer ට විකුණන්නේ. එදාම ඔයා මේක recognize කරගන්න ඕනේද? ඔයාගේ asset එකකුයි liability එකකුයි. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ inventory එකකුයි liability එකකුයි විදිහට මේක recognize කරගන්න ඕනේද කියලා අහන. Yes or no. That's what it says. Legal title passes when the cars are either used by the entity for demonstration purpose or sold to a third party. එතනට අපිට දැන් අපේ consignment goods වලදී legal title එක ගැන මොකුත් කිව්වේ නෑ. So legal title, you can see legal title is an irrelevant. Right. Second one, the dealer has the right to return the vehicles to the manufacturer without penalty. Asia has rarely exercised these rights in the past. ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒ කියන්නේ මොනවද return කළා නැති තරම් නේද? එතකොට yes, you can recognize, that means you can recognize this as an inventory and the liability, because it is only be exercised rarely, right? And third one, the transfer price is based on the manufacturer's list price at the date of delivery. Deliver කරන දවසට තියෙන transfer price එකට, transaction price එකටම තමයි deliver කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So that you can yes exercised. Next one, entity makes a substantial interest-free deposit based on the number of the cars held. Right? Substantial interest-free deposits based on the number of the car sold. So basically still you can recognize the asset and the liabilities, because the dealership is effectively happens for the interest which could be earned on the cash sums, right? So whatever because through this dealership they can earn a lot, right? So in that case they should recognize revenue and they should recognize the asset and the liability in their financial statement, right? So that is the consignment goods. And finally we're going to discuss about the build and hold arrangements. Build and hold arrangement. Some customers are there. Some customers, they come, they pay the bill, and they ask just keep the items with the entity itself, and they will take it in a day until such time. Please keep that with you, right? In that case, can the selling company recognize this? Why? Because they wanted to ensure where the risk of the item is passed to the customer, right? In that case, you should careful when to recognize the revenue, right? Under a bill and hold arrangement, goods are sold but remain in the possession of the seller for a specified period, perhaps because the customer lacks of storage facility. සමහරවිට customer ට storage facility මදින්ද එයා කියන ඕ මම තියන්න මම ඔතෙන් ගෙනියන්න කියලා. An entity will need to determine at what point the customer obtains the control of the product. We should ensure that which point the customer gets the control of this product, right? Right? So for some contracts, control will not be transferred until the goods are delivered to the customer. For others, the customer may obtain control even though the goods remain in the entity's physical possession. So remember, that depends, because for some contracts, depend on the contract, control will not be transferred until the goods delivered to the customer. Customer ගේ අතට යනකම් control එක transfer වෙන්නේ නැහැ. But there are some contracts that control will be transferred even though the customer is not collect the possession, or that means it's remain in the stores in selling entity, right? In this case, the entity would be providing custodial services, right? Custodial services කියන්නේ ඔයාගේ මම ඔයාගේ බඩු ටික තියාගෙන custodian service එක කරන්න. which may constitute a separate performance obligation. Remember, then it comes as a separate performance obligation. You can where items ටික ගෙනිච්ච නැත්තම් මම ඊට කොහොමද බලා ගන්න. For that I am charging an amount, right? So it will be another separate performance obligation to the customer or the customer's asset. For a customer to have obtained the control of a particular in bill and hold arrangement, the following criteria must be met, right? So to have obtained control, customer ට control එක හම්බුණා කියලා බලන්න ඔන්න මෙන්න මේ condition ටික තියෙනවා. That means the customer has got the control. The reason for the bill and hold must be substantive. That means the customer requested by the customer. කියන අපේ issue එකක් හින්දා මේ customer ම කියනවා තියලා යන්න කියලා. එහෙමනම් he get the control because he get the risk. The product must be separately identified as belonging to the customer. කියන අපිට පුළුවන් වෙනවා අපේ entity එක right මේ location එකේ තියෙන ඔය තියෙන අර customer ගේ body ටික කියලා වෙනම identify කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. The product must be ready for the physical transfer of the customer, right? It must be ready for the physical transfer to the customer. Entity cannot have the ability to use the product or the transfer it to another customer. මේක වෙන customer කෙනෙකුට යවන්න බෑ. ටික specifically identify කරලා තියෙනවා. right ඔය ටික මේ හෙට deliver කරන්න තියෙන්නේ කියලා. එහෙමනම් you can assume that the control has passed. Accordingly, you can recognize the revenue even though you have done the bill and hold basis. Right. Okay, we look at the example which is given for that. An entity entered into contract with a customer on 1st January 2018 for sale of a machine and spare parts. Machine එකේ spare parts ටිකයි විකුණන්න. It takes 2 years to manufacture these, and on 31st December 2019 the customer paid for the both machine and the spare parts but only makes physical possession of the machine. මොකද කරේ? අවුරුදු දෙකක් විතර ගියා මේ machine එක හදාගන්න. අවුරුදු දෙකක් ගියාට පස්සේ මෙයා මොකද කරන්නේ? machine එක අරන් යනවා. හැබැයි spare parts ටික ගෙනියන්නේ නැහැ. Customer inspect the accepts the spare parts but requests that they continue to be stored at the entity's warehouse. එයා කියනවා මේ ටික මම machine එක ගෙනියන්න. ඔයා මේක මම මේ maintain කරලා දෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා. There are now you can see there are now 3 performance obligation. One is transfer of the machine, second one transfer of the spare parts, and the custodial services. The transaction price is allocated to the 3 performance obligation, and revenue should be recognized when control passes to the customer. The machine and the spare parts are both performance obligations satisfied at a point in time, right? And for both for both of them, that point in time is 31st December 2019. So that day they can recognize the revenue for the machine and the spare parts. In the case of the spare parts, the customer had paid for them, the customer had legal title for them, and the customer has control of them as they can remove the store from any time. The custodial service are performance obligation satisfy over time. යා කියනවනේ ඔය spare parts ටික තියන්න මං ගෙන එනකන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ බලා ගන්න කියලා. ඒකටත් මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ? එකක් performance obligation එකක් විදියට it will be satisfied over time. So the revenue is also have to be recognized over a period of time. So that's how you should recognize the revenue in relation to the build and hold assets. So with that we conclude the other specified part under the SLFRS 15 also, right? You can revisit the video and get a good idea. And just make sure that you highlight all the important areas of your areas in your study pack, because it will be easy for in your standard book, because it will be easy for you to refer everything at the examination quickly, right? Okay. So hope that you got an idea, because I split this lesson into 2 videos. The reason is bit of a complicated and lengthy video. It will be complicated otherwise if I put all the things under one video. That's why I split into 2. So we'll try to finish the related questions related to the SLFRS 15, right? Okay, so thank you very much.